call of the Hogs can be heard all the way to San Francisco.
You're listening to Pod at the Palace with Curtis Wilkerson on Inside Arkansas.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome into the show. Hope everybody's week is off to a good start. Let's talk some Arkansas basketball, shall we? Yay. Everybody's excited for that. Oh, man. I'm always blown away by sort of the mental gymnastics that goes on with fan bases just throughout the course of seasons. Not specifically Arkansas, and I don't mean that in a bad way either, but it's really fascinating right now. It's like a psychology class, you know? Like Arkansas fans right now are kind of going through the 5 stages of grief with this basketball team. And it's pretty funny. Everybody copes in their own way, you know? Like some are still in denial. I've seen a lot of that. It's just a surprising amount, honestly, considering – kind of where this season has been headed. Cal had no roster. The SEC is good. Stop overreacting to the worst start in program and Calipari history. I know a lot of people who watched the game on Saturday where we're hearing the broadcast team making the Arkansas is the youngest team in the SEC excuse. And by the way, it's pretty misleading and kind of out of context. Because you got to remember that John Calipari filled the back end of his roster with a bunch of young guys, right? And so I know people pull that KenPom number and it's like, oh, average D1 experience is 1.46 years or whatever, and that's not quite accurate because he only brought in 9 guys who were expected to play, right? And so that average is drugged down a little bit. I'm not saying they're the oldest team in the country. They don't have a bunch of super seniors out there like Kentucky, but to act like these guys just don't have a lot of experience out there on the floor is crazy. I mean, Johnell Davis, he's a 5th-year senior. He's got multiple NCAA tournaments, a Final Four run under his belt. Jonas Adu, in his 4th year in the SEC. Trevin Brazile in his 4th year in the SEC. Adu Thero in his 3rd year in the SEC. Both DJ Wagner and Big Z, came with a year of SEC experience under their belt. So, it's a little bit disingenuous, but again, it's part of the denial, and that's okay. Like you just don't want to believe it, right? That this is really happening. This is going on. There has to be some kind of reasonable excuse here. You know what I mean? And some people have moved on to the anger stage of the process. A lot of people are there right now, and buddy, they're getting it off their chests, and that's fair. I've been there. I think this last week I was kind of in the bargaining stage, It's like, remember the episode? I think it was a week ago. I was like, hey, listen, it's bad, but there is a pathway out of this. Here's where they can win 7 games or 8 games and still get into the NCAA tournament. I know it's not good, but maybe they still got a chance. Maybe they can flip the switch. Or, a lot of people are doing like the, hey, it's, we have to deal with this because this is a year for baseball thing, right? Like we'll take this trade off because Dave Van Horn's finally going to give him to the mountaintop this year. It's okay. We'll make that trade. But personally, for me right now, I think I'm like going through depression and acceptance probably at the same time. Like I've come to terms with what's going on here, but I'm also very sad about it. I don't like it one bit. Oh man. We talked yesterday about just like how the heck we got here, because not even the most pessimistic John Calipari haters out there saw it going quite this poorly, this quickly. Today is more or less about not staying here, right where they're at. This season's failures cannot extend beyond the final game of this year, whenever it ends. It can't. And honestly, even if they did do something crazy, something remarkable, and wind up going to the NCAA tournament and salvage it, I do not see a pathway to that happening at all. So don't yell at me. He's popping sunshine. No, I'm not. I'm saying even if they did, this right here, what we're going through is not acceptable moving forward. I mean, it's crazy. It's the worst start in program history in the SEC. The struggles that John Calipari is facing right now, they've got to serve as a wake-up call. That changes are going to be needed moving forward with some of the approach here. And you guys hear that? I think it's BBN punching the air again. We don't care what happened in Lexington. He's here now. They're our problems. And just like you didn't want to accept it, neither do we. Okay. We're in the same place here. Listen, it's interesting to hear some of the, the discourse that's going on out there. My friend Aaron Torres, I was listening to his show last night. He spoke on Arkansas yesterday, and he just posed the thought that if this season kind of continues on its current path, like maybe John Calipari considers stepping aside at the end of the year. I'd never thought about that. And his thought process was like, one, to preserve his legacy. And he was kind of calling for that at the end of last year at Kentucky before he made the trek over to Fayetteville. And then two, because if you just look at him now, and I know he says otherwise, there's no way he's having a lot of fun, dealing with this situation. I don't think it has anything to do with Arkansas so much as just the struggles, and folks continuing to pile on him. I don't know. He probably doesn't even pay attention to that. And listen, if he goes 0-18 in SEC play, I stick to what I said last week. I'm not going to lie. Like, I think there's some real tough conversations to be had, because you just don't do that here at Arkansas. And it's just so far beyond unacceptable given the resources, the commitment made, the tradition of this program. That's not okay. That being said, I don't see how the heck you let Hunter Yurachek make the next, he can't make the next hire if it turned out that way. Sorry. So they would have to figure that out too. I know it's really bad right now. I just can't fathom a world where it gets that bad. I just can't. I think they're going to win a game this week. I mean, I'm not going to throw them a parade if they do that, but I still, and maybe I am still in denial, but I can't rationalize in my mind the first year under John Calipari being an 0-18 SEC season. That can't become a thing. But beyond it being that, I really truly hope that he is able to take advantage of a full off season. Maybe that, reality check that we're talking about, is that even a possibility with a guy like Cal? I don't know. But to have a shot at redemption, with a revamped roster, I would love to see some self-awareness and modernization and, staff changes. But I'm not a greedy man. I know what I'm asking for here. Okay. At any rate, what we're seeing now, but that can't happen again, right? Nobody's going to put up with it. The fan base, he's 18 games into his tenure, and it's already kind of turning on him for multiple reasons. Nobody wants to feel that way. People just prefer Razorback fans, at least, that they are good at basketball. Just good. Yeah, of course. Like, we all want to get back to a Final Four, hang another banner, whatever. But the bar's not that high. Just be good. Just get to the tournament. I'm not saying that's the ultimate goal. That's why people get mad when it's like, oh, they're just happy to make a bowl game in football. No, not at all. You strive for much, much higher. But that's like the bare minimum expectation, right? It's like, at least get there, like at least get the invite to the party. But at this stage of his career, for Cal, I really think there's just two pathways to high level of success. One, having more talent than everybody else. It's kind of been how he's found success in the past. And listen, earlier on in his coaching career, he was the guy that was at the forefront of innovation, believe it or not, in college basketball in terms of X's and O's, dribble drive, all that. Now, has it passed him by? Yeah, sure. An argument could be made for that, I suppose. Hell, I don't know. But the other part would be, I think, being willing to hand those keys to the offense to somebody. It needs to be modernized. And that's not just me. There's not a person out there that doesn't feel that way or see that. I'll let you decide for yourselves if you think that's a likely outcome or not. But I know for darn well sure the first one is, when we're talking about talent and roster building. But it's not as simple as it once was, and it's not going to be as simple as it was in the past offseason, right? Because now you're selling a different thing. And that's why I think it's really important. He's got to show proof of concept, get some of these guys going, find some wins here. You got to give the fan base a reason to believe that while he's a legendary recruiter, that he can still, quote unquote, drag you across the finish line in these games, right? The sales pitch is a little bit more complicated now. It is. But you got to be able to sell some kind of momentum. And listen, for starters, he better hope Tyson is willing to cut that same kind of NIL check after not getting return on his investment this year. That's the biggest thing. Like, you got to have the resources in place, and I think he will. Regardless, I think he will. But you better hope that's the case, right? But secondly, and the good thing is he has just an unmatched, I guess is the word, track record with recruiting, and he can point to all the NBA stuff, and he will. we know that. We know where that kind of lies on the pecking order. But he's gonna have to tackle the negative recruiting that comes along with what we're seeing right now. Like, if there isn't a pretty sharp turnaround, pretty quick change over the next 6 weeks or whatever, because people are gonna see, like, hey, you had multiple 5-star freshmen this year that just didn't really pan out. What's up with that? A couple top end transfers who busted on you, kind of tanked their, professional aspirations there. You think schools recruiting against Arkansas aren't going to be highlighting this? They absolutely are. Does it matter? Maybe not, because it's still Cal and he's still got the connections. You again, like you think and hope that he's still got the NIL resources. He's still got the references that you can check in with, in the NBA. Now, it might be on a travel day and they can call a recruit or something, but it's a little bit different. Like that, those are some of the things that he's going to have to tackle. The roster is going to need a much different look next season. I mean, that's not like a grand declaration or anything. Certainly has to address the lack of depth, right? Like, hey, he tried something different. He overcorrected too far, missed on some guys, got burned. I mean, it's just the reality of the situation. It happens. I think the first question then is like, who do you get back? Who do you get back? Who do you want back? Right? Because like you want all your players back when you have a really good team. It's like, oh yeah, they won a bunch of games. Let's get all these dudes back. When you stink, it's like, you know what I mean? In my opinion, and it's just my opinion, but if you can get Thero and Big Z and Knox and Richmond or any combination of those guys back, you do so. Thero's probably going to the league. I mean, he's coming into this season. It was like, hey, he's on the back end of a first round draft projections. Why? Because if it ever clicks for him, he's a pro, and the shooting still hasn't been there, but he's really taken a huge leap. Probably in position to get drafted, maybe even in the first round. So he's probably gone. And with Big Z, I get it. People are gonna be like, why would you want him back? Well, I mean, there's not too many 7'2" guys out there that can shoot 45% from three, for one. And I get it. He definitely has his limitations, but having to go add like four like an entire front court in the portal, it's a really tough ask, Like, you'd prefer to have somebody. And then Knox and Richmond, I think second years, it's just likely better than the first. Like another full off season. I think there's a lot of potential in both of those guys. Obviously, I was super high on Knox coming into the year, and he just wasn't ready. Seasoned enough to be a big time player. I mean, hell, he started half the games for Arkansas this year, but certainly hasn't played as well as maybe he expected or anybody expected. Richmond, I think we kind of already viewed as more of a project in terms of, hey, this is a dude in year 2, year 3 that could be really good for you. I think he's kind of on that track, but you'd like to have both those guys back. It's like Cal said, he doesn't want to coach a guy for a year for him to go thrive for somebody else. So like, really, you want your guys to either go pro or graduate with you, right? Not hit the portal. And who knows, like some of these guys are going to transfer and go somewhere else. That's just the way it works. Who is it going to be? I have no idea. But then what about the backcourt? And that's what I'm going to be pretty curious to see, because you have a pair of alphas coming in here in Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas. Both of those guys I think are better than your current freshmen, like significantly. I think this is a better class, talent-wise. And both of those guys are ranked for whatever the heck is that worth, significantly higher. I really like Darius Acuff a lot. Malik Thomas, so much fun to watch. I love a lot about his game, but I do get a little bit nervous about the early returns on some of those OTE guys. And that's probably just like a recency bias thing, but I don't know. But my point is, you have those two. I'm not sure how in love I am with the idea of having those two guys, but knowing that like 35 minutes in the backcourt is already guaranteed to DJ Wagner. No disrespect to DJ, but it's true. We know that Kentucky fans are real frustrated about that last year. You don't really have a choice this season, but I don't know. How much better is year 2 DJ than year 1? I think he's improved. But it's not like off the page improvement. Like, how much better would he be in year 3? Hell, I mean, he might want to start his pro clock. I don't know. But you see what I'm saying there? And then even though he certainly showed some holes in his game recently in SEC play, and I know he's injured now, how that will impact what his draft status looks like. I'm not sure what that dynamic would look like with Boogie if he didn't go pro. Although he's one I'd be willing to try and find out for. You want to talk about entertainment value, like Boogie, Darius Acuff, and Malik Thomas. That would be insane. I have no idea how that would actually work, though, in terms of continuity on the floor. We've seen like the attempt at just getting the super transfer stud guard joining the young guns, the 5 stars, the Burger Boys in the backcourt, and things not work out with John L. Davis. Portal wise, I'd almost be more interested in making multiple complementary additions in the backcourt, just knowing what you're going to have back, have coming in. And that doesn't mean like bad players, right? But like, can you find the Antonio Reeves or Kellen Grady types who are just veterans, experienced, knockdown shooters, who can complement those pieces in Acuff and Thomas? I think that's more or less what I want to say. I know Arkansas's got the big bucks and going to go out there and spend and get the shiny toys and the sexiest transfer names. Well, they tried that, and they're still going to have to do some of that. But I do think for those who are like, oh, he didn't have much time, he didn't have a roster, and it was tough to put it together. I do think there is at least something to be said for he just had to put together a team. And so it was like, how can I get the most talented players possible and figure this thing out, which he says he does anyway. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't followed it closely enough. But the point is maybe a little bit more attention to specific needs and specific roles and gaps that you want to plug. And maybe that's it. A couple guys like that. Can you go get an actual veteran, experienced point guard who can really take some pressure off of these freshmen and knock down some shots? That's going to be a key. You hear me saying that? Knocking down shots, 3-point shooters. Go get a sniper. Please. Please do that. If there is a Kobe Brea out there, he goes to Arkansas this year. You just got to find him. Please. Not just guys who can shoot, guys who do it. I think one thing this team is kind of missing is like real length on the wing. Like that NBA length. And something, you've seen in Kentucky teams in the past, Arkansas has had it at times where they've just got those, like maybe a guy who's just a little bit more guard polished than Thero, but that kind of idea, like 6'7", long, versatile, athletic, just gives you more lineup flexibility. You can play him at the 3 or the 4 and actually, really get away with it. I'd like to see some of that, but like they're going to have to do some nasty work in the portal to rebuild the front court. And like they didn't wind up getting Mo Silla, which I think would have been a good start there, but it wouldn't have answered all of your questions. It would have been a depth piece that was already in place. So they're gonna have to build out their entire front court in the portal, and that is expensive. Those guys come at a premium. It's like paying for offensive linemen, So how are they gonna do that? Like, how would they piece it together? That's what I'm really anxious to see. I hope that they piece it together with one more piece than they had this year. Right? Like, probably needed that fourth option, or really third option, because, Trevin has given him good minutes at the 5 in a pinch when he's had to, but really, like, you're only two interior center type players have been Adu and Z. How would I put it together? You're going to have to go out and win a bidding war for a starter, right? You got to have that guy. You got to have an SEC caliber starter. So, like, if Arkansas is going to go out there and get a top 10 transfer or whatever, I think it needs to be a big man. And who the heck knows, who's going to be available out there. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of options. But then, like, you almost have to go find specific skills, right? Priority number one for me, go get a Josh Gray type. We remember him well at South Carolina, and then obviously Missouri the other day. Big man, actually physical, tough, a bulk rebounder, the enforcer type. Like Dylan Cardwell is another guy that comes to mind. Just a big, strong, tough, mean SOB in the paint, because they just haven't had it. And physicality has been a big issue for Arkansas. You have to have a guy like that, it feels like, in your rotation. And it's crazy because we've been begging for that for, it feels like 6 years now or something. Like the entirety of the Musselman era, it felt like we were. And they sort of had it that year when they had Mackay and Mikkel. But, there's a little bit of Tarzan Jane going on there. So I think they got to get a guy like that. You need more of, you're going to need kind of like the long athletic build, like the opposite version. A guy who can really run the floor, guard the pick and roll, play above the rim. Maybe that guy's your starter. I don't know. But you need one of each, right? And then, like, you got to have kind of the best of both worlds there, I guess is how you would put it. Get you a floor spacer. I do think that's important, is having somebody in the front court who can really actually space it, stretch it, knock down the three, force the defense out of the paint a little bit. For me, ideally, like, that's somebody who can play the 4 or the 5, like, actually do it. I think back to, you guys remember Kevin O'Banner a few years ago when he was at Oral Roberts, and he had some really good games against Arkansas, and they were connected to him in the portal. He went to, where did he go? Texas Tech? Is that where he wound up? I think. Like somebody like that, Kentucky sort of had that last year in Trey Mitchell. Heck, I think he actually did have to play the 5 for them for a little bit. When they started last year, I think he might have been like the only forward on the roster that was healthy or something. They had like eligibility issues, broken feet, all kinds of nonsense. Those front court injuries seem to be following Cal around. But a guy or two like that. And then when you think you're done, when you think you have enough, go get another. Seriously. I really hope that they stretch this thing out to, if they're at 9 guys right now, stretch it out to 11 or 12. That way, for dang well sure that you've got 9 guys who can actually play. Right? Like if your 11th or 12th man is Isaiah Sealy, then I think you have the type of depth that, frankly, it just feels like you need in the SEC with the way that it's trending. I think everybody thought the SEC was going to be a really good league this year. It's just so much deeper and more talented than I think people anticipated. And again, it's once you get to this stage of the season, most teams are just they're mostly playing 7 or 8 guys. But it's just having those options. And if certain guys, it just gives you a little bit more breathing room, right? If you have an injury here or there, or somebody's not fitting into the system, or somebody's not as good as you thought they were, like it just gives you more room to miss on a couple things and get away with it. And that's just something Arkansas hasn't had this year. It's going to be a very, very fascinating offseason. I know we still got plenty of games, coming up for this year, and we're going to continue to cover. We're going to preview Georgia in the morning and see if we can find a pathway to Arkansas getting off the schneid and getting a win for a change. That would be cool. I think a lot of eyes are kind of turning to some more big picture stuff now of, man, this has been tough. We don't want to go through this again. So what has to happen? Is Cal going to go out there and, reinvent himself as a coach? Is he going to be a little bit more willing to delegate or take some chances on some guys on the staff, divvy up responsibilities, be more open-minded. I don't know. A lot of people who've dealt with him in the past would probably say no, or if he does, it'll be, headbutt city the entire time. I don't know him like that, so I can't really say. But what I do know is in the past, when he's had more talent than everybody, he wins a lot of games. And it's not as easy to do as it was back then when he was, again, like he was out in the forefront with the one and dones, right, and everything like that. And that's where that was the bread and butter for him. And the transfer portal kind of balanced that out a little bit, right? And we've seen that kind of impact some of the success there. He's been a little bit more hesitant to fully embrace it. We'll see if he takes a step forward in that area this year. If that man feels pressure, there's pressure on him right now. So time will tell. But anyway, I'm getting out of here. Appreciate y'all again for tuning in, indulging as we talk about this. And it's sure it's going to be a roller coaster ride the rest of the way through the year and throughout the course of portal season, but we're going to be here to cover it all and talk about it all. So it's been Curtis Wilkerson with Inside Arkansas on the Pot the Palace. Hope everybody has a good day. We'll preview Georgia tomorrow. We'll have the Pot the Palace post-game show tomorrow night. Thank you, guys. Everybody have a good one.